Welcome to the Capital News. I am your host, Alex Koritis. Today is January 22nd, 2020. Thank you so much for joining me. Title of today's podcast is Trial, Day Number 1, and the Business Cycle. Now, clearly the trial did start yesterday, but that was more of the procedural stuff. That was just a lot of parliamentary movements and political gimmicks and attempts to on behalf of the Democrats to get witnesses and documents really to the forefront sooner rather than later. If at all. We still don't know if they're even going to be released, documents being released, and if potential future witnesses will be subpoenaed. So I am calling this trial day number 1 because this is when the opening argument really begins. Now, recall the rules of this are going to give a few days for opening arguments to both sides. The House managers will be going first, and then the defense team for Donald Trump will respond. So it's not a back and forth day by day. It's House managers are going to have their few days if they want to use all the time, and likewise, Donald Trump's defense counsel will do the same. Then it's likely to go towards questions from the senators themselves. The senators will not be able to do this orally. They're going to have to write down their questions, and those will be turned over to Chief Justice John Roberts, and then they will go from there. However, what the House managers and primarily the Democrats are looking for is to have witnesses before that takes place, before the question time from the senators. What makes sense, doesn't it? Shouldn't the senators have the ability to ask some of the witnesses questions? Shouldn't they be able to ask questions of the documents? So to me, that's more of a fair and open and transparent process. At least seemingly, as of today, the Republicans don't want to do that. They don't want that to be the process. They want the process to be, okay, opening arguments from both sides. Senators can ask questions, and then maybe we'll get to having witnesses and other documents coming in. Maybe. And even if they do, if you follow that process that the Republicans seemingly are pushing for right now, most definitely the White House wants to rush this through. And if you understand the facts of the case, the facts and evidence, you can understand why. And if you paid attention to the arguments yesterday, just on the procedural things, as I stated yesterday, the defense counsel for Donald Trump does not seem that prepared. Now, hopefully they will be when it's their time to present their opening arguments. I hope so for the sake of the president and for the sake of the country. Because yesterday, they seemed agitated, irritated, didn't want to be there. And their arguments, some of them were not even complete thoughts, not even complete sentences. Some of them, like I said yesterday, I was laughing out loud, literally. What is this guy talking about, Jay Sekulow in particular? And it really sounded like the president himself was making these arguments. It sounded like Thunder Thumbs' Twitter feed. Well, if that's the case, just send him down there. I mean, they have to do better than that. I mean, I know they're not playing really with a great hand, but that's not their fault. That's the president's fault. It was his actions that led us to where we are today. You have some on Fox News and other right-wing media. Even Dan Bongino I've seen on his Twitter feed, scrolling through, some things, talking how yesterday it was boring. It was boring. The process was boring. Is this supposed to be exciting? Did I not get the memo? Is this supposed to be some type of cage match? This is a very serious process. I mean, are we supposed to believe that because we have a reality TV star residing in the White House, that everything that takes place in our government has to be made for TV? That everything has to be exciting? This is a process. This is how the government works. You want to watch a cage match? Turn on the UFC, turn on wrestling, whatever you want to watch. This isn't supposed to be exciting. It's a shame that it's happening. But it's not because it's a witch hunt or a hoax. It's because the facts show that the president abused his power. And in fact, what we know so far, it appears that Donald Trump's defense, at least part of their argument in his defense, is going to be made by Alan Dershowitz saying the president can abuse his power. He cannot be impeached for an abuse of power. Seriously? So they're pretty much admitting that he did abuse power, his power. But so what? They're saying it directly to us. 2 charges against the president in this impeachment trial: abuse of power and obstruction of justice. Well, they're pretty much, like I just said, they're going to come out and argue that an abuse of power is not an impeachable offense. It is admitting that he abused his power as far as I'm concerned. Because an abuse of power is most definitely an impeachable offense. It's rule number 1. That's how clear and evident this should be to everybody. We do not want a king or queen or monarchy here in this country, a dictatorship. We don't want that. That's what the founding of this country was built upon. That's what the Constitution, that's why it exists. Like we were saying yesterday in regards to the Bob Mueller investigation with the Russian collusion and all that stuff. Some of that was a hoax. Some of that was a witch hunt. I agree. But that doesn't mean everything that the Democrats do when it comes to an investigation is a witch hunt or a hoax. Again, these are not the Democrats' actions. These are the president's actions that are being called into question here. And as we were saying yesterday, with the precedent that exists within the Justice Department, that a sitting U.S. president cannot be indicted. So now that you take that off, right, that's gone. So basically, the Justice Department is saying, yeah, well, I guess the president can commit a crime, and at least while he remains president, he's not going to be indicted. Now, the Justice Department afterwards, after the president is out of office, they may indict him, may file charges. Maybe, maybe not. Now the argument's going to be, well, we can't do that. We can't indict him. And now, if he abuses his power, he can't be impeached. This is going to set, if the president is acquitted, this is going to set a very, very dangerous precedent. In fact, if the president is acquitted, what has basically just taken place is the power that resides in Congress has basically been absolutely abdicated to the presidency, to the executive branch. Slowly but surely over past administrations, more and more power has gone to the executive branch. The War Powers Act, the Patriot Act, all of these extrajudicial things that the president has the authority to do. He should not have this authority. And I'm not saying this of Donald Trump. This is previous presidents. This has been a continuation. This, in large part, is why I do believe this country is as divisive as it is. Because we are not adhering to our Constitution. Too much power resides in the presidency. Exactly what we do not want in this country. We expect the president to be the savior, the fixer of all things in this country. Whatever your problem is, the president's going to fix it. Unemployment, I'll take care of it. Cancer, I'll take care of it. Farming subsidies, I'll take care of it. War, I'll do everything. Declaration of war by Congress where it belongs. If the president wants to take action, he'll take action. And they'll use fancy legalese to say everything, to justify what they're doing, like they just did with Iran. It was imminent. It was imminent. I couldn't call up Congress and let them know what was going on. It was imminent. They've been having a tough time defining what that actually means. You have different stories from what the president says versus what the Secretary of Defense says versus what Secretary Pompeo of State says. Surprise, surprise. And then, after all of that is out in the open, that they can't get their story straight, then President Trump, of course, on Twitter says, what difference does it make? General Qasem Soleimani was a bad guy. He was a terrorist. He was a bad guy. So who cares? Who cares what the justification was? I bet the founding fathers would care. I would hope the American people would care as well. So they can't even get their story straight on that. And now there's going to be a defense for this president that he can abuse his power. Now, Some of my conservative friends out there, Republican friends, or people who just simply support Donald Trump, are you going to be okay when the other party has the presidency? Because there will be another Democrat who becomes the president sometime in the future. Maybe it's in 2020, maybe it's not. Maybe it's a good ways down the road. Who knows? But there will be. Are you going to be fine when that president calls up another country and says, hey, I need help. I think you got dirt on one of my political rivals. Can you, open an investigation or at least announce it? Just announce it. I don't even care if you start one. Just announce it. Because then I'll use that political leverage against my opponent. Is that okay? Because that's what took place. That is exactly what took place. And there's going to continue to be arguments, mainly by Republicans in the White House and his counsel, of distraction, of divide, of don't pay attention to the facts. Look at the process. Look over here. There is definitely going to be mischaracterizations on both sides. Members of the House managers, they'll mischaracterize. Donald Trump's defense counsel will also mischaracterize the facts. But guess what? The facts do not change. That's why you have to pay attention. That's why I say here to stay vigilant. Not just on your portfolio and your investments, but on everything, on your politics, on our government. It is our solemn obligation as citizens of this country to pay attention. Otherwise, we end up in these types of quagmires and these types of messes. This isn't supposed to be made for TV. It shouldn't even be happening. I'm not happy by this. I wasn't happy yesterday that I had to come to the defense of sleazebag Adam Schiff. But he happened to be the one who was telling the truth, showing the facts of the case. You may not have liked how he presented it, but pay attention to the facts and the evidence and the testimony. This is why Republicans, the White House and his counsel, are arguing process and are trying to distract from the facts because they cannot argue the facts because they're not good. They're even admitting that the president basically did it. The president admits that he did it. And then he says, so what? So what? Does that matter to you or no? It matters to me. I care about it. And again, I voted for him. I voted for him because I knew Hillary Clinton was going to be status quo. I thought Donald Trump would shake things up. But that doesn't mean you become king to shake things up. It doesn't mean you say publicly, Article 2 gives me absolute power. I can do whatever I want. No, you cannot, Mr. President. Clearly, you didn't read the Constitution, or your reading comprehension is terrible. Your understanding of U.S. history is terrible. Again, it's unbecoming of the president to even think that. Somebody who's truly worthy of that office shouldn't even think that. Now, maybe I'm being too idealistic, but I believe in this stuff. I believe in the United States of America. I believe in our Constitution. I believe in the wisdom and the prudence of our founding fathers. What we have today, the politicians on both sides, in the House, in the Senate, and our current president, they are not our founding fathers. They are not even close. Not even close. So today, the Democrats, the House managers, made their argument. And again, I think they were very professional, very organized. I believe all House managers had their time before the Senate today, obviously to various degrees. But they made their claims on various topics. The opening argument of creating a timeline, which is imperative. All cases, you have to show the timeline. And then you have to fill in the blanks. You have to connect the dots. You have to understand that in most trials, you have circumstantial evidence. Meaning in most trials, you are not going to have the defendant on tape, on audio, video, whatever, with a signed confession announcing that they're going to commit a certain crime on a certain date to a certain person or whatever. That's not going to happen. But that's basically what the Republicans have been arguing for. Well, we don't have any of these firsthand fact witnesses, so, well, we don't know. Well, then why didn't you vote to have those first-hand witnesses come forward? Because you can get this all out in the open, and if you're so certain that the president is innocent of all of these things, of these charges, then you have nothing to hide. You know, the White House is trying to have it both ways with this executive privilege play. Well, he never asserted executive privilege. Because if you do that, you actually have to release documents. Now, you can redact some of them, you can black them out, but now the people's going to, oh, well, what's this? What's this? Yeah, you black that paragraph out, but I got some good information out of this one, and now I'm starting to think, well, if they said this in this paragraph, what must they have said in the previous paragraph? Or what must they have said in the following paragraph? That's the problem. They're trying to straddle a line. They're trying to hope that the Republicans can come through for the White House, for the president, and this will just be down party lines, and the president will be acquitted. And of course, those of you who have been paying attention to this podcast know my belief that if the president is acquitted, of course, it's going to set a dangerous precedent moving forward, but that the president is going to feel even more emboldened. He felt that he was exonerated from the Mueller investigation when both Bob Mueller and his Attorney General Bill Barr stated that he is not exonerated. But Thunder Thumbs, nevertheless, took to Twitter and said, I'm exonerated. Now, if he is acquitted, based off of an argument that his defense is going to make for him, that you cannot be impeached for an abuse of power, now he is going to feel like what he said was true. That in Article 2, he has absolute power. He can do whatever he wants. Who is to keep him in check? Nobody. Nobody can. Nobody. He could then go out literally on Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and kill him, and nothing's going to happen. Is that what we've devolved to? Is that what we're okay with? Because you think unemployment is at a 50-year low and that's the best thing ever? Because he put tariffs on and got the Chinese to talk? Meanwhile, the trade deficit with China has gotten even bigger. Our overall trade deficit has continued to get even bigger. Our federal deficit is now $1 trillion and climbing. The president continues to call for negative interest rates, continues to call for an increase in quantitative easing. All of these things are destructive. Do you care? Or he gets to play the tough guy and that's all you want. You just want to pay attention to the Twitter feed and to the headlines. Just look under the hood. It doesn't take that much. And another thing that's interesting that was noted today, and it'll be interesting to see how President Trump's defense counsel counters this, if they even do. I mean, I assume they are because the argument's going to be this. But the House managers made the claim today that Attorney General Bill Barr, an appointee of Donald Trump's, during his Senate confirmation, noted that an abuse of power is an impeachable offense. Professor Jonathan Turley, the legal scholar who served as a witness on behalf of the Republicans during the House impeachment inquiry on the Judicial Committee, stated that an abuse of power is an impeachable offense. Now, who did the president and his team happen to find who would stick by the president and say, yeah, an abuse of power is not an impeachable offense? Alan Dershowitz, a criminal defense attorney. I mean, this is what we're dealing with. And he, of course, is on Fox News. He's on all media outlets all the time, but on Fox News quite a bit. So maybe Donald Trump thinks he's made for TV. He sees him on the TV. He thinks it sounds good because he's defending him. It's flattery. It's all that stuff. Okay. He'll come on the team. Although Alan Dershowitz is distancing himself from Donald Trump. He's saying, no, I'm not really the defense for Donald Trump. I'm defending the Constitution. Again, everybody on this side of the aisle is trying to have it both ways. It's not how it works. A monarchy, a dictator has it both ways, not here in the United States of America. We're supposed to side on the side of truth and justice, and that's all I'm asking for here. And I'm asking for the whole truth. Even Donald Trump today in Davos Another quip, another mistake he made, speaking about this trial. Oh yeah, I'd be fine having John Bolton come forward, but he caught himself. I really don't want to do that. Really don't want to do that because, we didn't end on a good note. We didn't end on a good note. So that's supposed to hold us up. That's supposed to prevent us from knowing the full truth, or at least a little bit more of it. Because maybe John Bolton will say, I don't have the whole truth either, but I know who does. I can connect the dots. There's only a couple other players who would be in the inner circle. And if it's not John Bolton, well, maybe then it's a couple other people. And then you get them there. And you have them testify. And you have them release documents. And if it proves that Donald Trump abused his power, then so be it. It's an unfortunate event, but so be it. Likewise, if those documents should prove and testimony should prove that Donald Trump did nothing wrong, then so be it. That's all I'm asking for here. It's all I've been asking since day one. Since the day we took the time on this podcast to read the whistleblower complaint, from the day that we read the memo from the Inspector General of the intelligence community, when we read the transcript or the quasi-transcript that was released from the White House in regards to the Donald Trump-Zelensky phone call on July 25th. Because another thing that's quite astonishing, but not surprising, is the defense counsel arguing, is this all about a phone call? Simple answer, no. It is not about a phone call. It's about much more than that. And that is what I have stated from the get-go. When we took the time to read that transcript, I said plainly, that day, I said, in my opinion, for what it's worth, this to me doesn't seem to rise in and of itself to an impeachable offense. But I said, there has to be more on the other side of this. And an investigation may be appropriate. And it turns out that it was appropriate. Because this was not an impromptu phone call. And all of the testimony and the documentation that we have thus far has shown that this was far from an impromptu, spontaneous phone call on the 25th of July, 2019. This was well prepared. There was a lot of stuff taking place months before this phone call. In the State Department, in the National Security Council, in the Defense Department, Office of Management and Budget, in the White House itself, all over the place. And it's not good, folks. It all looks political. For the benefit of the president, which by definition is an abuse of power. He is not there to benefit himself. He is there to work on behalf of the country. If he was so concerned about Burisma and the Bidens in 2016 and CrowdStrike and all this other crap that he's putting out there, then why didn't he go after this in 2017? Why didn't he go after all of this in 2018? Why didn't he hold up the aid to Ukraine when we know perfectly well that Ukraine was most definitely corrupt in 2017 and 2018? Because there was a new president in President Zelensky who came to office to be the knight in shining armor who was going to tackle the corruption. So Donald Trump doesn't give a damn about corruption. He doesn't give a damn about the money that was going over there. If he did, he could have stopped it, or he would have made a public policy about it. He could have raised concerns about it to Congress. Because one of the arguments that was made yesterday by the counsel for the president was that, well, this has happened before. They've held up money before. Previous administrations have done this before. Barack Obama did it in 2013 with Egypt. Yeah, and that fact was quickly countered by the House managers. That's correct. We're not arguing that the White House is not able to hold up funds. We're asking, why are those funds withheld? In the case of Barack Obama in 2013, in regards to Egypt, you had a little thing called the Arab Spring going on. You had a revolution going on. Maybe we didn't know where all of that money was going to go if we sent millions of dollars over there. Doesn't that seem logical? And guess who called for it, too? The Republicans. Logically and rightly so. Barack Obama didn't pick up the phone. Can't remember. Was it President Mubarak over there at the time in Egypt? Hey, President Mubarak, yeah, we're not going to give you this money unless you do us a favor. Did Barack Obama say that? I have a campaign coming up. Got to look into somebody for me. Was that said? No. It's not a question of holding it up. It's why it was held up. Donald Trump held up the aid because Joe Biden was in the race and remains in the race. And he said, ooh, Nelly, we can do something here. We can do something here. And maybe it wasn't his idea. Maybe it was. Maybe it was Rudy Giuliani's. Maybe it was Mick Mulvaney's. Maybe it was Ambassador Sondland's. Those are the people who were involved in a drug deal. That's your inner circle. What do those people know? Those are the questions. Those are the facts that you have to seek. Those are the questions we need answers to. We should be demanding them. Now, I don't know how much you give weight in all these polls that are out there, but a lot of the polls that are coming out there in regards to Americans wanting to see witnesses and further documentation, it's in the upper 60s, low 70s. It's going to be interesting to see how those polls change over the coming week as the House Democrats, the House managers, make their argument. Because I can guarantee you most Americans have not been paying attention to the nitty-gritty details. I stated this yesterday. Those of you who pay attention, the news junkies, the political junkies, people who watch news all the time, you got better glimpses of it. You're probably not getting the full picture unless you're flipping through different stations, different media outlets. But most Americans have not been paying attention. I would argue most senators have not been paying attention. Some of the senators might be surprised on both sides of the aisle as to what actually took place, what the House actually knows as of today. And it's damning. It's damning because you have people who have served this country honorably in uniform, foreign service, who have risked their lives in some of the most horrendous situations you can imagine in some terrible countries against the credibility of the President of the United States, which again goes back to an argument we've been making here, trying to help the President for months. Credibility. Who are you going to believe? Well, if the President didn't lie and exaggerate all the time, maybe it would be easier to believe him when he made comments and statements. I don't believe him anymore. I'm done with it. The boy cried wolf one too many times. So now it's his credibility up against somebody like Ambassador Bill Taylor, West Point grad, Vietnam war hero, ambassador from the United States, versus Donald Trump. Who you think I'm going to side with? I mean, the list goes on and on and on with the people who have come forward and testified so far. This is what we're dealing with. This is what happens when you have somebody in office who thinks Article 2 of the Constitution claims that the president can do whatever he wants. It's not. It's very simple. It's very black and white. It shouldn't even be argued. But we're arguing it. Which, interestingly enough, is the opportunity for Congress, especially now in the Senate because it is in the hands of these senators, to take back their power. To take back their power. So much of it has been given to Republican and Democratic administrations. It needs to come back to Congress. It needs to come back to the people. That's where it belongs. Not with the president. This is a crossroad. This is a test. Our Constitution is being challenged. If the president can't be indicted for a crime while he's president, and if he can abuse his power and not be held to account through constitutional means, which is impeachment, then he cannot be held to account for anything. Which means we no longer have a president. Which means we no longer have a constitutional republic. It means we have a king who can rule by decree. And that's it. That's not what this country is supposed to be. At all. I am not being hyperbolic. That is the precedent that is going to set. Now, maybe Donald Trump won't truly go above and beyond and really start abusing that power now that that precedent is set. But now it's a precedent. Maybe the next guy coming in will say, oh, geez, man, I got all these plans. I'm just going to do everything by word of mouth, by decree. I'm just going to sign everything and nobody's going to stop me. Because they can't. because there's precedent. I can do whatever I want. Now, who knows what's going to happen? If you recall last week, I talked about my Machiavellian strategy that might be at play. It was a theory, speculation, complete speculation, as to what the Republicans in the Senate might actually be doing. They might be giving the president a little bit of rope, his defense counsel as much rope as they need to hang themselves, because basically it's a win-win for the Republicans, because they can end up washing their hands of this at the end of the day by doing what they're doing right now. They can be a win-win situation, because if they had come out and said, yes, we want a fair and open and transparent trial, we want new witnesses, we want new documentation, the president, the White House has to comply, well, you know who would go off the wall. Thunderthumbs would. He would start attacking everybody. His base would start attacking. Not necessarily physically, but you understand what I'm saying. Be irate. Here, all the Republicans have to do is just play it calm and cool, buddy up to Donald Trump, because that's all you got to do to play him. Be buddy-buddy, flatter him, stay loyal, and he believes you. He believes you're his best pal. So do that. We're going to work hand in glove with this administration. We're going to rush this through. The Democrats rushed it through on their side, so we're going to do the same here in the Senate. And that's exactly what we're going to do, giving the impression that they're going to acquit at the end of the day. Now, that might be the case. That might be what happens. But there might be that little Machiavellian twist behind it. Yeah, we're going to give the president all this trust, this flattery, this loyalty. We're going to give him rope. Because at the end of the day, if the Democrats do make their case, and it's overwhelming and it's convincing, and the public starts to pay attention and the poll numbers really start to turn, that the public is demanding new witnesses and demanding documentation. Well, Mr. President, there's only so much we can do, because now people, it might not just be in the polls. It might be emails, it might be letters, it might be physical visits of constituents into these senators' offices, demanding that there are witnesses, demanding that this looks like a trial with witnesses and documents. New witnesses, new documents, not just what is being presented by the House managers. Then they can say, well, Mr. President, there's a process. We are held to account by our constituents. They want witnesses. There's nothing we can do. The evidence thus far is damning. We thought you were innocent because you said you were innocent for so long. And then, now they have the cover, if they need it, to vote the other way, to vote him out. It's complete speculation. But that could be what's taking place, because it's a win-win for the Republicans. It's a win-win because they don't have the ire of Donald Trump and his base coming after them, because right now they're on the side of Donald Trump. But if all of these facts come out and the public opinion changes, well, there's nothing we can do. We have to honor the process. We have to honor the Constitution. And then they can simply say to their constituents, well, we didn't know. We were trusting the White House. We were trusting the president. We wanted him to be innocent. We wanted to acquit him, but you have to weigh the facts. And they weren't good. And then they can say at the end of the day, when it comes down to voting and the next election, well, you're going to vote for us. Free trade, fiscal conservatives, all that yabba, yabba, yabba. Versus the lunatic socialists. They'll come home. They're betting that they're going to come home. Those Republicans will come home to the Republicans to keep them in power. Because I can assure you something, ladies and gentlemen. Mitch McConnell, the leader of the Senate, he cares more about having power in the Senate than he does about keeping Donald Trump in the White House. I can guarantee it. And nobody should be surprised by that remark. Donald Trump, even if he's reelected, he's gone in 5 years. January of 2025, he's out. Mitch McConnell, he can go for a long time. Real long time. That's all this is about. So I hope you understand what I'm saying. Complete speculation. But if that's what happens, and here's what also tells me that my theory, my speculation, is still intact. Because you had Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer of New York out today following the 8 hours of opening arguments, coming out and saying, there's no guarantee, obviously, but I am hopeful. I am hopeful that the four witnesses that the Democrats are looking to have come forward and testify, I am hopeful that they will testify. Now, why would he say that? Why would he say that he's hopeful? No guarantee, but I am hopeful that that is going to take place, given the case and the argument that was made today and what is likely to be made tomorrow and possibly the day after, because we'll have 3 days. Interesting, isn't it? And that there's not going to be any type of horse trading going on, at least that's what he says. Horse trading in regards to having Vice President Biden come forward and testify and his son Hunter Biden come forward and testify. He's saying that's off the table. That's not going to happen. But our four witnesses, we're hopeful that that can actually happen. That would be John Bolton, Mick Mulvaney, and I believe two other individuals from the Office of Management and Budget who would work and answer to Mick Mulvaney, who wears two hats basically, as the acting chief of staff to the president and the director of OMB. They're both very, very important positions within the administration. So, there is a lot to still be learned here, and I do believe that most of the senators are probably not as informed as they think they are, especially if they've only been watching Fox News. Because Fox News is a continuation. It's basically the propaganda wing of the White House, just like MSNBC was the propaganda wing of the Obama administration. It's just a flip. Wake up and understand this. That's why I tell you to watch all of them. Listen and read as much as you possibly can from as many sources as you possibly can. Because what's being stated on Fox News is this is boring. This is boring. Distraction. It's process. Ignoring the facts. Part of the timeline and part of the opening arguments today, you had Congressman Jeffries making a remark in regards to the phone call and the transcript, and that it was far from perfect, which is true. It was far from perfect. And now, once you have all of these other facts, now you can really kind of start to pay a little bit more attention, word by word, of the transcripts. Because during the transcript, and they read it in its proper context, President Trump saying to President Zelensky of Ukraine on the July 25th phone call about looking into 2016, CrowdStrike, the server, having wealthy individuals. They say Ukraine has the server. They have information. And Congressman Jeffries, the House managers, they put this up there on the screen. They had it highlighted, and they had the word they underlined. And I'm like, that is exactly correct. Because I knew what the next question was going to be from Congressman Jeffries. Who is they? Who is they that the president is referencing? Who is they that was saying that Ukraine was interfering in our 2016 election? That there was a CrowdStrike in the server and all this mumbo jumbo? Who is they? Because it's not our U.S. intelligence community. All of them have shot this down. You have the testimony of various national security experts who were up there. Dr. Fiona Hill comes to mind. And others. You had Ambassador Yovanovitch. You had Ambassador Bill Taylor, all making comments in reference to this. That this theory is a conspiracy theory that was perpetrated by Vladimir Putin himself. And you can find this on video, where Vladimir Putin is out there putting out this theory that it was the Ukrainians who interfered in the 2016 U.S. elections and the servers and CrowdStrike and all that mumbo jumbo. So who is they that Donald Trump is talking about? Does he mean the Russians? Does that mean that the president is believing the Russians over U.S. intelligence and his most senior advisors? Or is they Rudy Giuliani and Lev Parnas and Furman and those characters? Who is they? What were they doing? Basic questions that need some answering. And of course, Donald Trump throws that word out all the time. People are saying, and then you say, well, what people? And then there's no answer. They. So who is they? great question. It's always simple. It's always the simple stuff. It's like Sherlock Holmes and the dog that didn't bark. You know that story? Well, the dog didn't bark. That must mean the dog knew who was here. Huh. It was an inside job. Read that story, Sherlock Holmes. It's always the little stuff. It's always those fine details. And I think the House managers did a good job of going through the facts. Again, organized, a little bit long, obviously. It's a long day. There's no question about that. But there's a lot of stuff here. And they're trying to state this to senators who may not really be in the know. They're trying to state all of this, a lot of it on multiple occasions, the same video clips, some of the same emails, text messages, because Americans are tuning in at different times. And a lot of Americans may not have paid attention during the impeachment inquiry. That was the inquiry. This is the trial. So now maybe they're paying a little bit more attention. Now we'll see what the president and his defense counsel has. We'll see what they say in a few days. Now, the interesting thing there is their arguments are going to start on the weekend. So how many people are going to be paying attention to this on the weekend? It's going to be the same stuff over and over, I'm sure, with the distractions and all of that. So that's trial day one, opening arguments. Now the business cycle real quick here. End of the business cycle. We talk about the business cycle all the time here. End of business cycle was something that was thrown out today in Davos by Bob Prince, who is the CIO, Chief Investment Officer, or co-CIO of Bridgewater, which is the largest, hedge fund. Again, that is with Ray Dalio. So Bob Prince is out there saying, this is the end of the business cycle. It's done. It's dead. The business cycle is dead. Central banks, I guess, have cured us of the business cycle. That's scary stuff because basically he's saying this time is different. Not to mention that Ray Dalio just published a book not that long ago dealing with cycles. All about cycles. Years and years ago. History of cycles. Like I've stated, Bridgewater is as much a financial and economic company, a history company, as they are experts on investing. So it's very interesting that this individual comes out and says the business cycle is dead. Yesterday we had Ray Dalio come out and say that cash is trash. I guess time will tell. But I mean, this goes back to sort of Irving Fisher in 1929, saying that there is a permanent plateau in the stock market. And of course, you all know what happened afterwards. A huge, huge correction. The start of the Great Depression. 80-90% decline in the stock market. You know, people are talking about the Roaring '20s again, right? The Roaring '20s. What people don't understand in this country, because most people don't understand their history. They don't even understand their Constitution, which we just went through. A lot of people don't understand that there were a couple recessions in the early 1920s. From January 1920 to July of 1921, an 18-month recession took place. Then, in May of 1923 to July of 1924, another recession struck. Duration of 14 months. Understand these dates, too, because the Federal Reserve came into existence in 1913. So they've been around meddling for quite a while. Why these two recessions are typically not discussed is because there was still a larger portion of the economy, if you will, that functioned in a free market capitalistic manner. So what does that mean? That means the waste, the malinvestment, it was liquidated. The government and the central bank wasn't coming running to save everybody, which only prolongs the agony. But after having a couple decades under the belt, come 1929, 1930s, well, the government and the Federal Reserve thought they could save the day that time, and you had the Great Depression. So just because some people are out there saying, well, this is going to be the Roaring '20s, you better be careful. Because the 1920s started off with 2 consecutive recessions. So pay attention to that. I do not believe that the business cycle is dead. Not at all. Not for a second. They're just able to push it out further and further. It's hysteria. It's a fraud. It's corruption. That's all it is. That's all it is. And if that's going to be the answer that kills the business cycle, that we are now on funny money, on counterfeit money, to keep everything up, my goodness, how far we have come. How far we have fallen. A president who is calling for quantitative easing, negative interest rates to kick this can further down the road, who's saying he has absolute power, and a Federal Reserve and other central banks who are doing that exact same thing to kick this can further and further down the road. How far we have fallen. And then lastly, on the coronavirus, that is continuing. The whole town, basically, of Wuhan, China, which is about 10, 11 million individuals, the whole town is under quarantine. The whole town. Speculation as to where this virus is coming from. I read a brief article on it might be coming from a Chinese snake. A couple different snakes over there. Maybe that's the case. Maybe it isn't. There's, again, in this hysteria, the truth is always the first casualty. So I don't know what to believe, who to believe yet. And the World Health Organization has yet to make a determination as to whether or not this is something much bigger and something that really needs to be paid attention to. But we have the Japanese market down 1%, and we have the Shanghai composite, the Chinese market, is now down 3.4%. When I started this, because I was going to kick off with the market performance, it was down 2.5%. Now it's down 3.4%. That's the Shanghai composite. So things, I mean, again, is this just going to be the new trade headline? Is this thing going to just be coming back and forth? And I hope that's not the case, because this is life and death here. Let's see, where do we have the Hong Kong markets? They're down 2%. All right, folks, this is a longer one. I know, I apologize. I do my best to keep these to about 30 minutes, but we went over a little bit here. I appreciate your patience with me. But there's a lot of stuff going on, and we need to discuss it. And we have to have these open conversations because we're at a crossroads here. I am not happy with it, but these are the actions of the president. These are the actions of central banks. If we don't keep them to account, who will? Please like, share, subscribe, get the word out. Leave your comments. We do love hearing from you. Stay diversified, stay vigilant, and stay with the Capital News. I am Alex Koritis. Godspeed.